Good evening and welcome to BBC News. The controversy over whether taxpayers lost out in the Royal Mail privatisation was revived again today when the National Audit Office said they did, and the cost was up to £1 billion. Its report criticises ministers as deeply cautious when they were setting the share price, and as a result the Mail was undervalued. But during the day, the Prime Minister and the Business Secretary Vince Cable spoke out to defend the sell-off. Here's our industry correspondent John Moylan.
Successive governments had tried to privatise Royal Mail. Last October, the coalition finally succeeded. Now the public concluded that the Department for Business, which led the sale, didn't get value for money.
The department could have done better to achieve value for money for the taxpayer. It focused in particular on selling the shares within the current Parliament and achieved its primary objectives, and we felt it should have gone further to ensure that it extracted the maximum value available to the taxpayer in this particular transaction.
I would argue the British taxpayer has benefited in three ways from the changes we put in place and the privatisation that's taken place. There's the benefit of a sale of Royal Mail and the capital receipt. There's the benefit that this is now a profit-making company paying taxes into the Exchequer. And thirdly, this is a successful company, doing well for Britain.
The government priced shares in Royal Mail at 330 pence for its stock market flotation, but the shares jumped 38% in value on the first day, the largest first-day rise in years. Almost 6 months later, the shares are now worth 562 pence. That's a 70% increase on the initial price. The report says the shares were offered to the market too cheaply because of the government's cautious approach. It prioritised completing the sale over getting a higher price. It relied too heavily upon its advisers, and it could have kept a bigger stake to benefit when Royal Mail's share price went up. The government wanted Royal Mail to have long-term stable shareholders, so it gave a core group of city institutions a bigger allocation of shares. These firms also had a role in Royal Mail's price being set so low, but the report finds that these firms had sold around half of their allocation of shares within weeks of the privatisation. Some had sold their entire stake. Today, the main postal union called for the business secretary to resign.
It was right that we took a cautious and measured approach to the sale, and this approach in light of our primary objective, and it reflects the considerable risks that we face due to industrial relations and challenging market conditions.
This has been a first-class disaster for the taxpayer, and those he wants referred to as spivs and gamblers are laughing all the way to the bank.
The report also questions the sell-off process. It wasn't flexible enough to enable the shares to be repriced late in the day. That could have big implications for the future when the government decides to sell off its stakes in our biggest banks. John Moylan, BBC News.
Well, let's speak now to Eamonn Butler, who's the director of the Adam Smith Institute, a free market think tank. The National Audit Office's report is pretty strong-worded. They're not mincing their words. They think this was, well, in the words of the Labour Party, disgraceful.
Well, I think this is the verdict of civil service accountants who don't really understand risk. The fact is that nobody knew what the Royal Mail was worth. We don't buy and sell Royal Mail companies every day to get to measure the price. So you have to have a guess at it, and you're better really to pitch the price low so that everybody buys into it. It makes the whole thing a success and benefits the taxpayer, but benefits those who invest in it as well.
You seem very relaxed. We've lost £1 billion.
No, I don't think that that's true at all. I mean, we've raised £2 billion on the sale. The bit that the government still owns that it hasn't sold is worth another £1.5 billion. When it sells that, it will be worth even more. The families who've invested in it, they have benefited. The pension funds who've made profits on this, well, you know, we all have pension holdings, so that's benefited as well. The 6-day delivery has been guaranteed by this sale. Taxpayers won't have to bail out the Royal Mail in the future. What is there not to like about this?
They went up over a third on the first day, and the ministers described that as froth. They're now up 70%. That can't still be froth.
You cannot predict the price of a company if that company has never been bought and sold before. Nothing like it has been bought and sold before. Nobody knows what the right price should be.
So in that case, I'm sorry to interrupt, but in that case, then why did they bother to employ any experts and pay those a lot of money?
Well, hopefully experts who are reasonably near to the market will have some inkling. But look at it. I mean, we had the threat of strike action over the period of the sale. Royal Mail was carrying 8% fewer letters at the end of last year than it was at the beginning of it. This looked like a declining market, and I think that what the share price recognises, what it reveals, is the fact that now that the thing is in the private sector, now that it is being reformed, now that new ideas and new investments are coming into it, it's actually a business with a future, which what didn't used to be.
I know hindsight's a marvellous thing, but it is rather a shame they decided to sell such a large stake straight off the front, isn't it?
Well, the institutions, in a sale like this, you rely on the institutions basically to make sure that there's ballast there so that if everything does go wrong and nobody buys the shares, well, they have to buy the shares. And that was really the deal. So these institutions bought the shares and the whole flotation was a success. Well, they've done their bit. So it's not bad that they should make money on that. And the people who will benefit, of course, are the people who have pension funds and all the other things that these institutions manage.
Eamonn Butler, Director of the Adam Smith Institute, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Welcome.